Hey, what's up you guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today I thought I would do something a little bit different. Since the spooky Halloweeny season is approaching, I thought it'd be very fun to share some of my favorite spooky paranormal Halloween films that I like to watch during the spooky autumn season. This list is going to consist of 13 different movies plus some honorable mentions towards the end. I will try my very best to not give away any plot details or like spoilers. If you want to skip complete chance of me saying something that you don't want to hear about the plot, I'm going to have timestamps down below where you can skip around to the different films if you want. So just a little forewarning, I'm going to try my best not to spoil things, but no guarantees or promises. So let's just get into it. So the first film I'm going to talk about is the movie Veronica. This is a Spanish film. It's a kind of psychological horror, paranormal, supernatural sort of film. So if you like films like The Conjuring or Paranormal Activity, where it kind of plays with the supernatural and like those kinds of beings, you might really like this film. It has to do with a high schooler named Veronica who experiences these really weird things that start happening out of nowhere. So that's all I'm gonna say because I don't want to give away any plot details, but if you're into the paranormal or supernatural stuff, you'll definitely like this film. You do have to watch it with subtitles, but if you can get over that fact, it's a really great film, and if I'm not mistaken, you can still watch it on Netflix. Next film is Eli, which is a Netflix original, and is another kind of paranormal supernatural film. I would more call this like a haunted house sort of situation, because it's like this little boy Eli who's being treated for this really strange rare disease that he's experiencing. So he has to go to this like really old facility in the middle of nowhere to be treated for his very strange disease. And really weird things start happening to him while he's being treated. And then he starts finding out very strange things about his illness altogether. So if you guys like haunted house type of paranormal movies, you might definitely like this movie. It's a little different from most like paranormal haunted house sort of films that I've watched, but it's really like a trip. There is some twists here that you do not expect. So that is Eli. Next film is the movie Scream. Now, Scream is my favorite slasher film. Like, I love slasher horror movies just as much as the next spooky gal, but Scream is my favorite most likely. I love how self-aware the film is. So it's kind of like a satire of all of the previous scary horror movies that came before it. It is directed by Wes Craven, so the big guy behind A Nightmare on Elm Street. I love the design for the serial killer and just like the references to 90s pop culture and music. It's just really fun. As for a little quick synopsis, it's about a girl named Sydney Prescott, and she is having people around her die. Like, the serial killer calls, and shortly after they die. And slowly it starts creeping up closer to her. So she's trying to figure out who's doing it. And that's pretty much what the film consists of, her trying to figure out who the serial killer is before the serial killer gets her. So that's pretty much the whole film. Really fun. There's some I would say there's some funny moments in it. I would even consider this like kind of a horror comedy in some aspects because it's kind of just so out there, but it's definitely like jump scary slasher filmy, very much in that domain. So that is Scream. Next film would be Ring, or Ringu, which is the Japanese version of the Ring. So you guys may have seen the American remake of The Ring, but if you haven't seen the original Japanese version, I would highly recommend you watch it. The Japanese version of The Ring kind of follows the same plot as the American version, but I feel like it's way better executed, in my personal opinion. If you are not familiar with the plot, it's basically about this videotape that whoever gets their hands on this videotape and watches it, they will die within a week if they don't give it to somebody else. So that's basically the whole plot device that is used. And then it falls into the hands of our protagonist, which leads our protagonist on this massive little adventure that she has to deal with the paranormal and the supernatural. So there you go. Trying not to give so many details. It's really fun. There's a couple of jump scares in it. It's mainly psychological, like thriller and slash horror and that nature of things. So if you like that kind of type of scariness, I definitely recommend. So another Japanese film recommendation is, I'm probably butchering this, Ju-on, The Grudge, which is the Japanese version of The Grudge if you've seen the American remake. Like I said about The Ring, I feel like the Japanese original version is way better executed than the American remake. It's another type of haunted house story, very similar to like Eli, where it's like you're dealing with spirits, and it's basically whoever comes into this house, this vengeful spirit will come in and kill you, essentially. So that's kind of the whole plot device there. We have our main character who runs into the situation and has to kind of figure out what the cause of the possession is and so on and so forth. So that's all I'm going to say about The Grudge, because there's some twists and turns in that film. I'm just going to say that right now. And remember, it is the Japanese version, which is called Ju-on, The Grudge. Okay? So let's proceed. Now I have another another Asian film here, and this is A Tale of Two Sisters, and this is a Korean film. Now, this is not really like a kind of like Halloween movie. It's definitely a psychological thriller, but you could watch it at any point in the year and you would still feel that same impact of spookiness. It's basically about a girl who is living with her father and her stepmother, and she's experiencing these really weird episodes with her stepmother. She doesn't know why her stepmother is hurting her in this fashion, and she's having just either situations where she's being hurt or weird things are happening. So let's just say that. I will say that there's a big twist at the end, so if you're a fan of twists, this one has like the biggest one that you don't expect. So I'm not gonna say anything more because I'm like the twist is so good, guys. Next film is going to be Interview with a Vampire. So if you guys for some reason haven't watched Interview with a Vampire, go watch it. It's a bit of a long film, I will say that, because it is based off of Anne Rice's novel, Interview with the Vampire. It's basically kind of like a period sort of film where you basically see the life of our main vampire character, Louis, and his kind of maker, sometimes considered lover, Lestat. So you basically see the life of this vampire and all of the things that he's experienced up until present day. So if you're very interested in kind of like regal looking vampires that also have that kind of grotesque aspect of feeding, you might really like this film. I personally love like very glamorous gothic looking vampires. I think it's great. I think it's a really great Halloween film in my opinion. Next film is going to be Tim Burton's The Corpse Bride. It is a stop motion film. It's basically about a young man who is about to get married, and in the middle of him practicing his speech to get married, he accidentally marries a corpse bride. So the movie basically follows his adventure of being accidentally married to a corpse bride and how he's gonna manage to get back to his bride to be, with a couple of twists and turns along the way. So it's a really fun, whimsical film. It is a musical, so if you're into like musicals, you might really enjoy this. There's some really great songs in here, some really great character design, and I want to give more love to this movie because I don't feel like not a lot of people give this movie a lot of love because it's such a great film. Next film is going to be Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. This is another Tim Burton film, and this is kind of in the same kind of gothic period sort of type of film. So it's kind of like based in like London in like the early maybe like 1800s, I want to say. My time is probably really off, but it's that kind of a film, and it's basically about a exiled barber who was exiled from his town many a year ago and decides to come back to this town to seek revenge against the judge who kicked him out of the town, and also recuperate his daughter who is now the ward of the judge. So essentially, it's that kind of a film, kind of like a revenge story with a little bit of slasher elements as well, since he is a barber, and these barbers did use those very fancy barber knives. I think that's what they're called. But yeah, it's a really fun film. There are some very graphic slasher scenes in this kind of film, so if you're a little squeamish towards blood, you might not like this film, but it's beautiful. It is also a musical similar to The Corpse Bride, and I think it's just great fun for the spooky season. Next film on my list is a much older film, probably the oldest of all of these films that I'm recommending, if I'm not wrong. And this is Carrie, the 70s version, if I'm not mistaken. There is a very recent version of Carrie that came out a couple years ago, but I haven't seen that one, so I can't really comment on that one. But the original 70s Carrie, amazing. If you can get over the fact that it's a little bit dated, it's a really interesting kind of film. You basically see this young girl who's been sheltered her entire life essentially go through a change throughout the entire film. She discovers she has abilities and that she doesn't really know what to do with them. And so it's kind of like a coming of age story in a way, but at the same time it's very freaky, kind of uncomfortable to watch at times, I will say, but I think that's what kind of gives it the freaky horror factor then, because it's still kind of hard to watch sometimes. So I definitely recommend it. There is a little bit of blood here in this film, and not a lot, but it's not really a jump scare film either. So it's kind of a very story-driven sort of scary film, if that makes sense. Yeah, that's what I'm going to describe Carrie to be, because it's kind of difficult to describe without giving too much away. Next film is going to be Frankenweenie, another Tim Burton film. This is also a stop-motion film, and it's just a really fun, really sweet Halloween film. I honestly don't think there's anything terrible in this film. It's basically about a young boy whose little dog dies, and he wants to bring him back to life, a la Frankenstein's monster style. So he successfully does that and brings his dog essentially back from the dead. And you basically see all his little adventures with this little Frankenstein dog. It's really cute. It's really fun. It gives me like vibes of like old 40s and 50s cartoons, mainly because of how it's shot and also of the black and white nature of this film. So this film is completely in black and white, even though it's a much more modern film. So if you guys don't like black and white films, you might not like this, but it's such a fun film. I highly recommend you give it a chance because it's so much fun. All right, next film is going to be Sleepy Hollow, and this is the Tim Burton version, I believe. I believe there's other versions of Sleepy Hollow, but this is the one I'm most familiar with. And it's kind of like, again, a gothic sort of period style film, where it's based, I want to say colonial times, maybe? And you basically see the legend of the Headless Horseman. So you kind of basically see Tim Burton's take on that famous story of Sleepy Hollow. There is quite a bit of gore and there's a little bit of blood, actually quite a bit of blood. So it's not like a whimsical Sleepy Hollow. It's definitely a very adult version of Sleepy Hollow. Really cool graphics, really amazing costume design, amazing score, I would say. Really good. Like really good. Like I'm just thinking about it right now and how I need to watch it right now to set the mood for the spooky season. It's really good. Before I ramble on about Sleepy Hollow, let's go on to our last recommendation and then we'll get to our honorable mentions, and that is El Orphanato, which is a film by a Spanish director whose name is skipping me right now, but it was produced by Guillermo del Toro, if my memory serves me right. And this is kind of a much more heavier, scary film. It's basically about a mother and her son and her husband. They move into this new house, and then shortly after they move into this place, her son vanishes and she doesn't know where he is, and she's like freaking out trying to find her son, and a bunch of weird things keep happening that leads her to believe that her son's trying to communicate with her. So it's kind of like supernatural, kind of haunted house like, but very like drama like. So it's kind of like a drama film instead of like a horror film, but there are some psychological thriller aspects to it that I think make the film worth the watch. Not a lot of people know about the film, so I highly recommend you watch it. It's a very interesting, heartfelt film. That's all I'm gonna say. So that's the end of our list. Now let's just get into the honorable mentions, and I'm just gonna fly through these because you've probably seen these already. First honorable mention is Hocus Pocus, because, I mean, come on. It's Hocus Pocus. Literally everybody I know has watched Hocus Pocus. And if you haven't, go watch it. Go do that right now. Next honorable mentions include the original Halloween and the very recent sequel that came out, I think, a few years ago. And it's kind of like the direct sequel to the original Halloween, and they both feature Jamie Lee Curtis in it, and it is the piece of resistance of slasher films. So go watch Halloween. Next film on the honorable mention list is A Nightmare on Elm Street. Literally everyone I know has watched A Nightmare on Elm Street. But if you haven't seen it, it basically has to do with a slasher guy and dreams. That's all I'm gonna say on that one. And the last one, which might be controversial, and that is going to be The Nightmare Before Christmas. Now I can already hear the screams of people saying, The Nightmare Before Christmas is not a Halloween movie. Yes, it is, okay? The Nightmare Before Christmas is a Halloween film. It is a Halloween film and a Christmas film. If stores can put out their Christmas decorations in autumn and October, then I can watch The Nightmare Before Christmas during spooky season. There, I said my piece. Carry on. So that's the end of all my movie recommendations. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing me ramble a little bit about these different movies and why I like them. Comment down below some of your favorite movies. I love to see new films that I haven't heard about. And also, just a quick note, just because I haven't mentioned any of your favorite films, it doesn't mean I don't like them. It was just, I wanted to make this a really small and concise list for you guys, so it's not like 30,000 years long. So that's the end of the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. And like always, take care of yourselves, wash your hands, and I'll see you guys in the next video.